Today, we're honored to welcome Sarah to the Wild Holy podcast. Sarah is a minister in the United Church of Christ, and at the heart of her ministry is a deep gift for caring for people. She brings wisdom and a compassionate presence to those she accompanies. Sarah also carries a profound intuitive connection with the holy. This connection seems to be both second nature to her and one of the great gifts she brings into her pastoral and spiritual work. She listens deeply, trusts what emerges, and helps create space where people can encounter truth, tenderness, and the presence of God in their own lives. Today, Sarah joins us for a conversation about what's called the dark night of the soul, a season when the familiar comforts, certainties, and ways of experiencing God may feel absent or undone. Instead of treating this destabilizing experience as a failure or abandonment, spiritual teachers like John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila invite us to understand it as a mysterious process of transformation. Together with Sarah, we'll explore what it feels like to move through spiritual darkness, what it asks of us, and how it may deepen our capacity to receive the quieter, more delicate presence of the holy. Welcome, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. That was such a nice intro.
Sarah, we're so glad that you're here on the podcast, and especially because you are a fan of the podcast. So I hope it's not too mind bendy to be on a podcast with you too. And to talk about such a kind of delicate and subject. So thank you for your courage and coming to talk with us. So um, let's jump right into the dark night, man. Like, let's, if you want to, let's do it. Um, because I know you have a lot of wisdom to share, very much grounded in your experience. So, when did you notice, Sarah, that the characteristics of the dark night were showing up in your life and your spiritual life?
I think, believe it or not, like about 20 years ago, um, I think after I had my first child, before that, I had been really used to a rhythm of at least an hour, often two or three of prayer and meditation a day. Um, so for 30 years, that was um, my rhythm. And that was how I understood myself. That's how I connected with God. That's how I navigated the world, was with that quiet solitude and that time. And then when I had a baby, I was like, I can't meditate. I can't pray. There's no, I can't go into a deep meditative time because I have to pay attention to this life that needs me every minute. So um, I think, I wouldn't call that the beginning of the like I wasn't in the dark night at that point, but I think that was like the first cracks of realizing, oh, this isn't the only way to experience the holy and I'm losing it. And I have to figure out some other way um, to find ground beneath me and connection. And um, so, so I think it kind of started way back then. But then I would say maybe 5 years ago or so, a number of things coalesced in life to kind of plunge me uh, over the edge and really into what I think of as the dark night.
Hmm. So would you say that there's like a real straight trajectory with this? Like there's a dark night of the soul, and then there's like the post dark night of the soul, or would you say there's more of like this fluid kind of back and forth between a bit of relief and connection again, and then back into that darkness? How have you experienced it?
But definitely more the flow. The it's not. There's no clear lines. I think, navigating this. It's, yes, a flow back and forth. Um, I think of, the Song of Songs, really, the Song of Solomon in the Bible, where it's this love song of the lover and the beloved, and, you know, one wakes in the middle of the night to the beloved being gone and can't understand it and doesn't know why, and searches through the streets to find the beloved. And there's this like coming together and separating and coming together. Um, and I've always sort of looked at that as God takes a step back so that we will search and follow and grow. Um, and I think, for at least in my experience, I would say, I felt sort of like in my 20s and whatever, just a closeness, a huge closeness with the holy. Um, and then starting with that change in life of becoming a mother, um, it was suddenly like, wait, you've left the bed. Where did you go? How do I find you? And it's been kind of search and find for a number of years until suddenly it was very different. And I think the darkness is that all the maps being, I think of it as, the maps we construct subconsciously to navigate life, to navigate who we are and how we understand ourselves in the world and our relationships and our role and our vocation and just about everything. The maps disintegrate, um, and you're left uh, in the darkness. I think carries grief, it carries loss, it carries sadness, but the darkness is really more about not being able to find your way, not knowing where you are, just disorientation. I think because the maps are gone and you just don't know how to navigate.
Did you feel, Sarah, so can you say a little bit more about before even 20 years ago? So it sounds like you had a spiritual practice of, for someone in their 20s, especially, like an hour or two of meditation or prayer is like monk-like.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So that was
Yeah.
that, yeah, that was part of your life. How would you have described God or the divine at that point, for you and with you?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that started like in childhood, really. I didn't when I got to college, I was a religious studies major, and I remember reading about meditation for the first time, and I was like, "Oh, that's what I do." I didn't know there was a word for it. I didn't know, it was suddenly a definition. So for years, really, sort of the rhythm of my practice would be to journal and then kind of pour myself out, and then it was like a becoming totally available to the divine, because I poured out all my concerns and then just like poured into a pool of kind of silence and connection and communion. Um, and so God was that consolation, that sense of um, communion and closeness, and always an energy of love, first and foremost, of um, inspiration um, and joy and humor. And I felt, I really did feel throughout the day that often I could tune in to that sort of whisper of God internally, have conversations, um, feel just feel like God was readily present and close. Uh, so all like yeah, so I had this like beautiful, um it was very healing, very I always sort of felt like I had one ear to the world and one ear to God, and could communicate um could always check in with God. What do you make of this? What's happening, and get God's take on things. And that just really helped me know how to be, you know. It was such a part of my identity.
Well, I can see how much it really means to you, and that there's probably a bit of an ache that it's not there in the same way in this moment. Or how do you experience God now?
Um, eh, in a much subtler way, um, and in a much hmm, it's really hard to find the words, but in a deeper, subtler way. Um, I was thinking before I knew we'd be talking about this conversation, so I was thinking about my experience of the dark night, and um, this image that comes to my mind is that there is this beautiful place in Wyoming called Sinks Canyon, and it's this place where in early spring, or in spring when the snow melts on the mountain, the water comes tumbling down, just massive amounts of water comes tumbling down this mountain, forming its way, gathering debris, dirt, rocks, branches, whatever it crashes into, until it gets to the mouth of this cave. And it tumbles into this cave. You can see, I'd love to be there in the spring when this happens. I've only been there in the summer when the water has quieted, it isn't so high and it's quieted down a bit. But you can see then above the mouth of the cave, the debris that got crashed into this huge cave from that torrent of water falling down. And then it goes into this cave, which is quite shallow and just turns into rock. And the water goes through there, and we don't know what happens to it, exactly what path it takes. It soaks into the limestone. And about a quarter of a mile down the mountain, in a pool they call the Rise, this water bubbles up. And it's this pristine, crystal clear, still as anything water that's oxygen rich and nutrient rich. And it is a home for trout, like the biggest trout you've ever seen, the gorgeous colors. It's a sight to behold. Um, and I think of, like that image of like early life, like on the mountaintop, and there's air and there's sky, and that's how we navigate, and we know the world around us. And at some point, the snow melts and we tumble down the mountain in this torrent of water, crashing into debris and picking it up, smashing into this, mouth of this cave. And then, we don't know. We're suddenly in the darkness. We're suddenly seeping through limestone, which we don't even know what that is and how it's happening or what's happening to us or what is going on. Um, and then somehow we end up this peaceful, tranquil pool, like rich in life and nutrients. Um, I can't remember what your question was, but that's
No, no,
that's what
I like
that's what
where
I've
you
been
went,
thinking
and
of.
it got there. Yeah. So because I had asked you the difference between, where you were, how you experienced God then, and what the difference was now. But I like that you brought us through that analogy of that, what happens, in the middle, that darkness of being filtered through the limestone and the darkness of it. Because I think that some people, if they're not experiencing God anymore, and if they feel like that connection has fizzled or severed or something, they might, and I know my old self would have, thought it was something to do with me and what I did. Perhaps I sinned. There's sin blocking the way or something that I did that I need to fix. So God's mad at me. How do you so your understanding is different, and I know you've already explained a little bit, but maybe you have more to add to that.
Yeah, I I think those thoughts are quite natural. If if God has left me, I must have done something, right? And I think that gets filtered out through that limestone, you know? It's part of what gets filtered. It's part of the map that needs to be disintegrated and torn up. Is that's not true? That's not how God is, right? And just to go back a bit to the, how do I experience God now? That's different. Is in that what I was trying to say, that like more subtle, deeper, more peaceful, rich way that shows up in that pool, that rise. Um, it, those kinds of thoughts are filtered out through that experience. They're um, thoughts about, for me, just judgments and um, ideas of right and wrong and shoulds and all kinds of things have gotten filtered out through through the dark night in a really subtle way. And so then the experience of God becomes much less the consolations that I could easily connect to and easily feel like communicative and all of that, and much more of like a gut level peace, and not needing to cling or know or drive in the way I did before, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm just taken by the fact that through that purification process, you found that those thoughts of judgment and the shoulds have just naturally been filtered out. And to me, I mean, to me that feels like what's being left behind is love, essentially, like a purer form of love. Would you define it as that?
Yeah, I think what I feel, have learned, understand now is really that it's all love. Like, the the snow melt and the torrent, and that even those are love, right? And certainly it's lovely to be in that pool. Um, but I don't know that anyone just exists in that state of mind 24/7 all the
Mhm.
time, right? So
Yeah.
so that is maybe more easily nameable as love, but what that pool says is that it's all love, right? The pool is like, see, it's all been love all along. It always has been. There's nothing else.
I've been thinking too, Sarah, about like, is there such a thing as a graceful dark night of the soul? Like, I'm just thinking about the debris and just like the violence of water going down this hill and like picking up things as it goes along. And I think just based on my own experience of dark nights, they are often grace filled, but they're often really messy and difficult. And it's like, again, just that image of like rolling down a hill and just like crashing into all this stuff. And I mean, that just feels so true to my experience. And I've been thinking about that Gerald May book, Dark Night of the Soul. And he's really drawing on the work of, Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, who kind of like Dark Night of the Soul guides. And we'll add your name to the list, Sarah, for Dark Night of the Soul guides. Tours coming near you. So, um, but they, as Gerald May describes it, he's really talking about like the purpose of the dark night is very similar to what you said, that there is, I mean, I hate to even use this word, there's a kind of purification or a sort of letting go of even the filters that we had. And what's striking to me is like listening listening to you talk about your early childhood experience, there was so much intimacy with God there, like an extraordinary amount of intimacy with God. And that I think very few people have or experience in their lifetime, like to begin with, or even at the end. And then, and then there was more. There was more to experience. And it seemed like it, even the maps, as the maps disappeared, this like deeper and deeper embedding where like, where do I begin? Where does God begin? Where do I end? Where does God end? It's hard to say. And do you feel, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, um, when I described early or childhood and early life being that intimacy, like almost like a conversation, you know, like two voices, mine and God's, and um, how you put it is like, where do I end and where does God begin? And like that line is less distinct. It's not two voices. Um, it's more of, I don't know, more of a, it just is, right? Not it's just more of a, I guess a sort of oneness, but yeah, like not really clear where the lines are, no clear distinctions, and um,
Mm.
yeah,
Well, I think that's what some folks call non-dual awareness, right? And what contemplation is or contemplative experience is, where it's like the boundaries are fuzzy. And um, I don't know if he's a friend of the podcast. Is Richard Rohr a friend of this podcast? I hope so. Um, but um, yeah, but the idea that the boundaries are kind of squishy, not in a gross, unethical way, um, as we're
right,
thinking about it, but in a way that there is just being and isness in a way that's hard to define because language maybe is inherently dualistic and it seeks to define. And what we're talking about is, beyond, almost beyond language, almost.
right, right. Yes, it's nice to find that. Yes, non-dualistic consciousness is a good way to put. Um, yeah, where do I begin? Where do you end? Or where do I end? And uh, what's happening? Right. It definitely, for me, definitely feels much more subtle, much more on a gut level of like God's in my being, in my bones, in my um and uh hard to know, where do I end and God begins. It's just, yeah.
I wonder, Sarah, to use your analogy of going from all that rubble and stuff from the torrential rains through the limestone into like that filtered pure pool. Do you think that it's like that life is kind of a can be a multiple cycle of that and you're like in that pool, but then you get evaporated back into the clouds and you come down through all the mess again? Do you think that this just can be a cycle that happens over and over in this lifetime? I don't know. I mean, sometimes if you're in the middle of it, that probably sounds horrible that you think you have to go through it again, right?
Yeah, I want to be like, oh God, I hope not, but
God,
I
I
think
hope
it
not.
probably
Yeah,
is,
maybe to lesser or
hope
greater degrees, right? I mean, maybe
yeah,
not the same.
hopefully not to such a disorienting degree as
Yeah,
the first Dark Knight is. You don't want to go through too many of those.
yeah.
'Cause I mean, like, be clear, it's no fun to go through. It's, that they call it the Dark Knight for a reason, right? It's not, It's no fun. So, um, I would hope, I don't know, but I would hope that later iterations down the road won't feel as disorienting,
Yeah.
um, and as hard.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but you never know. It is how we grow.
I suppose. Well, just yeah. Well, I'm wondering, in May's book, you said that you found that helpful as sort of giving you language for what you're experiencing. In particular, his mention of Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, who were both in the Carmelite order in the 16th century. And I think that they both were living around the same time and both trying to bring this very affluent kind of religious order to trying to bring them into a more contemplative state and kind of purify that spiritual relationship again. Um, so, what did you find helpful in their voices of what they've written about and what they've experienced and their helpful words to people? What did you find helpful that they'd given us?
I'll be honest, I think like when you're in the experience and you're plunged into that, like nothing makes sense anymore. It's really hard to take advice or to
Yeah,
because the maps just don't make sense. Nothing, so I found writers like that and wisdom helpful to assure me that something was happening, that there was a map or a something that it was known and experienced by somebody else.
yeah, maybe some
I
company
found
for
it,
the journey.
yeah, assuring. But I kind of feel like it's one of those things you can tell somebody all you want about what they're going through, but it, they're in the experience, and mm, uh, you can only. I found I could only
Mm,
hear so much or
yeah,
take so much wisdom from while I was in the midst of it, right?
yeah.
One thing I found helpful, I was trying to remember the name of this podcast, but I remember a few years back hearing a podcast, and they talked about the difference between depression and the dark night. And that was helpful to me in it because I knew it shares a lot of characteristics with depression.
Huh?
There's you know you can have grief and loss and sadness and disorientation, and that exhausts you, and all of lack of energy and all of that. But I appreciated hearing that in the moment because I knew it resonated with me. This isn't depression. It shares characteristics with depression, but this is something different. Um,
What stood out
uh,
to you as being distinctive from depression?
so, um, for sure, there were things that um, uh, life circumstances that came together that kind of led to or pushed me over the edge into the dark night. And they were experiences of loss and sort of crises, but it was it wasn't the predominant feeling wasn't sadness, listlessness, grief, things like that. It was um, disorientation. It was suddenly um, everything had turned upside down and rearranged and was a totally different world. And I had, it. So my experience of depression in the past has been um, it, the indicator or the main point of it was just a real depression of mood, as opposed to this was just like a much more of a total disorientation, a complete I can't see in the dark. I don't know what's happening. Everything's changed and it doesn't make sense. Uh, and of course, fundamentally, God's not answering. I'm not getting any. Yeah, and God's not here. That's what it feels like. God, nothing makes sense and God's not here.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you lifted up one of the ways that you kind of coped with the or answered the question of depression or dark night, because I think that's a really good question to ask. And every person's going to be able to, with, we love therapy on this podcast. So please take advantage of every resource that's available to you if this has been your experience. Um, I'm also struck, Sarah, by the fact that through this whole time period, you also had your very full-time job, working as a minister. And I'm wondering what it was like to you, knowing how much, you know, ministry is emotionally demanding. It's demanding a lot of ways. um, and I just wondering how did you cope with being someone who was in the dark night and being a spiritual leader at the same time?
Uh, um, it it was like at times completely like um just show up and uh something will happen and it won't be from me, you know? um because I at times my conscious mind knew I had nothing to give, right? But and perhaps that's been part of navigating it is those moments where I have to be there, I have to show up, and I know that I've got nothing to give, and then that complete reliance on whatever may come from beyond or beneath or wherever, right? Or deep, whatever may come from deep, deep within, um, will show up and will have to be it because I can't conjure it, right? I can't do it myself. Um, that's been a lot of life the last the last 5 years. There are times I've written sermons and preached and um, just been
And
like,
like,
I've got nothing. And what um, comes from whatever God can do through me, right? And not from me necessarily. And at times I've been really open, uh, and people sometimes have felt like that resonated and was really, really helpful. Um, so yeah, but it's this sort of like of surrender to this whatever will be there, and it always is there. Um, it always ends up being there beyond me.
I think that's so profound, Sarah, because it's such a, or at least it's resonating with me as a pastor, because you can sometimes feel like you can be tricked and duped even by yourself into believing that you're making it happen, right? You have things to offer, and it's subtle, but it works on you, or people turn to you, or they expect you to kind of like snap your fingers and do the magic thing. And what I'm hearing is this like profound surrender, out of necessity, right? It's not like it's like
Hmm.
something like one day I will be so like absolutely dry that like the bones, like Ezekiel's dry bones, like we're just gonna watch skeletons dance in my ministry, right? Um, but the surrender of that is so amazing, and a parallel to your own Like, so if the internal experience is like the lights are turned off and I don't have a map, and then the vocational or job stuff is I got nothing, like it's going to have to be God. And pretty much every time, God does something there, incredibly, that too is kind of a purification.
Right. And I think truly well, I'll speak for myself because giving advice to anyone in the dark night, I don't know how helpful it is, but for me, the only wisdom I have for going through it is just trust and surrender, which, would make you want to punch somebody in the face if somebody told you that
Yeah,
when you're
right.
in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, going back to that image of like when the water coming down the mountain, when it finally hits that limestone and is in total darkness and has no idea what's going on, like it's gonna happen whether you fight it or not, right? So the only option is surrender to it, and a benefit is to trust that it is going somewhere and that you're not abandoned and you're not thrown, into the void of the universe without um, love companioning you. You just have to learn to see in a different way, right? Your perceptions your senses have to learn new perceptions, I guess. So surrender and trust are kind of what I found to be the only navigational tools.
One of the things I'm remembering from our last podcast episode, Stephanie mentioned about intuition and how it's a skillful practice and something you have to, it's like a muscle you need to engage and pay attention to, and it's a um, subtle skill. So, and you've mentioned that this dark night of the soul has been a bit of a purification process that has brought you into an awareness, maybe, and an attunement with an intuition that's a bit more, you know, in tune and can pick up maybe some subtler frequencies than before. Like, how is that? How have you seen that manifested? Like, what's your experience of that?
Like in day-to-day life,
Yeah,
what
and data, like maybe in your conversations with your parishioners, or in conversation, or just in everyday circumstances. Like, yeah, how does that manifest for you?
um I think in my presence, in by that I mean that I notice a different presence that I bring, or that just is with me, in that I so day to day in an interaction with someone who's a church member or whoever, I see them differently. I see myself differently. I feel them differently. Um, I think I mean, I, the way I kind of perceive it, I'm coming from my gut more, and in a grounded, peaceful, um, not defended way. Um, One of the things the dark night has like opened my eyes to is how even in such subconscious, unconscious ways, um, my interactions with people had been, um, eh, uh, I don't know, colored by ego defenses, right? By just how we see ourselves, how we need to protect ourselves, how we perceive the need to protect ourselves or protect others, or like and that doesn't come into play so much anymore. I think uh, I have more compassion. I don't, um, and I would say, before I would have been like, I have so much compassion. I feel so much for people. It's a deeper, pre-compassion. Before I even meet them, I have compassion, right? Like it's the ground now, um, as opposed to a tool or an emotion, if that makes sense. Um, I feel like I'm just babbling on, but it's hard.
No,
I
no, no,
haven't
no.
tried to put
Please,
into
no.
words before.
I'm glad that you're
Um,
doing take your time because this is helpful. It's not something that I feel like I'm super aware of. So this is good. Please continue. If you have more to say, if not, it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's just that's what I meant by like presence. It's a different. I'm showing up in a different way. Um, and I think I'm showing up in a way that opens me to other, well, the deeper truth of other people. And by that I mean like that that core uh truth, unshakable truth of who we are as beloved of God, right? Um as drops in the ocean of God, right? So um I I guess I perceive that more clearly with people and understand myself in those same terms with them. And I think then um everybody has like an internal flow going on, I believe. Like what's our lives are, we have got this internal flow, and I think that I'm better able now, or it just kind of is, that I'm more open to or present to or aware of other people's flow. Um so that, and I think compassion, that deep compassion, that sort of pre-compassion does that. Um, just opens us to each other.
I like the way you put it with calling it pre-compassion because it's like it just feels more of like a settled way, like a coming from a way of being as opposed to like engaging in action. Would you say
Right.
that that's what it feels like?
Yeah. It's not a
Yeah.
choice. It is. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
That's really beautiful, Sarah. Pre-compassion. I'm gonna be thinking about that for a while.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah. I know I have a lot of questions about it. Just like so, when you're in, so you're as you're exuding that or just being present with people, um, and you're experiencing this flow, you're just able to sense an individual's flow, and you probably are aware of your own flow. Do you sense any promptings from the divine, or do you just feel like you are within the overall flow of the divine and just being attentive and aware of where things need to go? Like, how do you know what to say, or how do you determine what to say to people, or how to behave in ways that are helpful as you're like ministering to people? Are you just doing it naturally and just trying, paying attention and to those subtleties, or is your brain engaged? I'm curious about that.
Um, well, I think, I'm definitely a work in progress still. I think, that the flow has its own, I think God is in the flow, right? Like I think God is in that everybody's internal flow. And um my sense is when I'm really present and open to that and really feeling someone else's flow along with my own is, I think what we do is we have that inner flow and we block it, all kinds of things for all kinds of reasons, block it, shift it, change it, you know, um, get in the way of the flow. So, um, I think part of tuning into that flow is the energy of where it wants to go. because it knows where to go. It has that wisdom. Um, so its own energy, and like watching its energy and noticing where someone blocks it, or, um, you know, for whatever reason. There are so many reasons. I don't mean this in any judgmental way.
Yeah.
We just that's it's human, right? And so my hope is to be able gently to guide back to that flow, when we veer away from it, right? In myself and in others, right? Whoever I'm sitting with.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful and unique way to describe the inherent goodness of a person and their capacity to be imbued with the goodness of God. Like it's just natural. So it's one thing to like it's so good to hear other people describe it from their personal experience, which I appreciate hearing from you because sometimes you can repeat a phrase that seems to resonate, but it gets a little hard and like not quite true. I don't know. So when you hear it, I don't know. I appreciate your explanation of it because I feel like, it's coming from that space of trying to describe it from a true, like what you've experienced, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It is hard to all of this I think is so unique and personal, right? In our own
Hmm.
life, all our own lives. It's so it is becomes hard to talk about sometimes.
At the same time, Sarah, do you feel like, I mean, I'm thinking about kind of our collectively where we are, where the world is, and uh, many places in the world, including including where we live. Um, do you see at a macro level what you experience on the micro level? Like, do you see blockages in flow? I mean, does this expand? Does this awareness and consciousness and presence for you expand from like interpersonal connections or um, one-on-one even to the larger collective? And you can define collective any way you want.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I think there's a way that you can say that the if you looked at humanity as a whole and um our flow, right,
Yeah.
is so blocked, is so thwarted, is so um you know yeah, so in that sense, absolutely, I see all the time how collectively or on a larger scale, we um we get in our own way, and we block what life wants to do in and among us, right? That that whole life, that abundant whole life, that's what life wants among us. And so all the ways we block our connection with other people, and all the divisions, all the lack of compassion, cruelty. Oh, yeah, all of that is on a macro level happening. What happens individually in each of us.
Well, and at the same time, I wonder if you would also say that there are some things that the Dark Knight accomplishes that can't be accomplished in other ways, or that they have maybe there is no determinism about it. They just happen, and one of the best things that can happen is the debris gets filtered and the water goes through the limestone, and you coming like that's a kind of holistic ecological sort of approach to thinking about our crises, big and small, and the potential for divine activity through it.
Right. Um, yeah, in one sense, I mean, I comfort myself with the thought that how powerful it is for individually for us to do our own work, for us um trust and surrender through our own journeys, and keep opening to the divine, because we're part of that collective, right? And so um the more of us who are in that flow, are opening, are doing that work, we're adding to the collective doing that work, right? Right. And I don't know, God works in so many ways. But I don't know what a collective dark night, or maybe we're on the verge of it.
It's a little frightening to think about.
Yeah, it
Let's
is.
be honest. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think we're there. I mean, I think we're facing. I mean, there's a whole political government level, right? At least for those who are living and listening in the U.S. I think the ecological crisis is a dark night of the soul for our globe because it's existential, it's overwhelming, it's so deeply frightening. Like a friend of mine who's a listener, yay, was saying to me the other day that she heard somewhere that fireflies might be going extinct in the future.
No, don't say that.
I
All the
know,
ambient light. Yeah.
and it's like a world without fireflies, but it's a world without like just yeah, I mean the Court. Just I mean, there's just there's so much, and I think one of the things I'm so struck, Sarah, by what you said about the kind of distinguishing factor for you between the dark night and depression, um, or one leading, shall we say, um, is disorientation. And I think a lot of people are feeling disoriented for a lot of reasons. And the rules, not rules, but the guidelines or maps, maybe to use your metaphor, the maps that people have been living according to. And Faith has this experience in her own kind of religious and spiritual way, right? Like, I mean, I do too, in a way. The maps that we grew up that folks said these are reliable, or they were our own internal maps, and we discovered them on our own, whatever that looked like. Those do not make sense anymore, and it
Right.
feels like what doesn't make sense for a lot of people who, like you're suggesting, Sarah, who want to be part of the change, who want to be part of the healing and growth and whatever of the world, um, are looking at the world and saying, like, so many of these systems are not working. They're not working towards the end and purposes that that really go to uplift life. And how do we get from here to there, right? Um, so the maps, yeah, I think people's maps are just like falling. We're falling off the map, you know. And so I just think I don't know. As I listen, I work with young people too who are concerned about AI and how that, like, will they have a job? Will they have a career? Will they be able to have a family, support a family? There's all these really big questions. And there's also like, where's God in the midst of this, or where's this all going? So I don't think we're getting there. I think we're there. I personally, I think we're there. Not everybody's in the same place with that, of course, but I think we're there.
I think that's really true. And if you think about the COVID and the pandemic's role in just turning the world upside down and everything, just the ground out from under people's feet, I think especially young people, um, that what is reliable anymore? You can't even rely that you can go to school, or that school won't be totally different, and that uh, you can be with other people in person. You can, so that I think adds to what you're saying, because coinciding with all that, we have this massive across the board, like, distrust in institutions and crumbling of institutions um, that gave people a sense of rhythm and purpose and structure and scaffolding and meaning. And um, those are those are not the sources of stability that they were. Um, and just like you said, Stephanie, add in climate change, add in political crises, add in just the shift in democracy that we're experiencing, in our political systems, and the just the shift in civil discourse, and how we talk to each other, and like nothing is seems reliable and right. Like all those maps are have been torn up, are being continually torn up. Uh, yeah, yeah. So collective dark night of the soul, perhaps. Yeah.
I'm going to trust that the wild holy is is underneath and around and in all of that upheaval and that breaking apart of the structures and the old maps, and that something new and better will emerge naturally and at the right time. So otherwise, it gets very scary, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah, and I think that's natural to the dark night. Is it feels so scary. It feels so um existential, um and overwhelming. Yeah, that's the can I curse here? That's the that's the shit of it, is what I want to say. Like
yeah,
that's the um that's the harsh, the reality of it is it's and I think a lot of the anxiety we see is is part of that, right? It's um
I just realized I probably did some spiritual bypassing by doing that too. Is that what they call
what
it? When it's like, I'm
what
just
do you
gonna
mean?
hope that God's gonna make it all good in the end. But the part of it is that you have to go through the unknowing and really enter into it, and that's the hard shit of it, right? It's,
Yeah.
yeah. So, it's difficult.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And trust that it's leading somewhere, right? Trust that it's disintegrating um for a purpose, for a in a direction, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that too, Sarah, and thank you for saying that about spiritual bypassing faith.
Mhm.
Not that that was an example, but necessarily, but just it's hard to stay in these moments of these feelings and perceptions too. But Sarah, what you're talking about in terms of like trusting that it's a trust deeper than trust. It strikes me that some of the things that fall away, like even in listening to your story, it's like, well, wait a minute, like if unitive consciousness, if we are inherently communing with God, or however else, I mean, however you want to articulate that, if there is actually this porousness between our selves, whatever that even means, and God, then the idea of us and God as subject and object at some level actually isn't true. And so part of what the Dark Knight is doing is it's not like it's ripping candy away from babies, right? It's not divine cruelty. It's actually grace. It's like, no, this is really true. And I think of some of like our crises like that too. It's like, I don't, yeah, like what a terrible world to live in where fireflies might go extinct. Like, and all this, like all of these systems are breaking apart, not because they're super awesome sauce, but because they're fundamentally like exploitative, or they uphold like a powerful elite, and while the rest of the 99% is like struggling. I mean, it's like um every day I drive past people who are unhoused, and I think through my own like faith lens or just compassionate person lens, like something's wrong with the way we've set up something, that there are people who are living under the bridge as I drive past under it every single day. Like something has broken down in how we have ordered our society, that is the case, that these people don't have literally a place to put their heads, that's safe, or that they're panhandling for cash, right? Something has so I guess that's a long way of saying that the Dark Knight again isn't about divine cruelty, it's about illusions actually being stripped away. And illusions we hold on to for very good reasons, I think, right? Like, or that's what we know. And then when they start to get stripped away, it's like, oh my gosh, no, there was maybe there is this fundamental porousness between me and God that always existed. And the idea that that God was out there or something other than me or not inside of me is not actually true. And if I think about my own like kind of dark periods of dark nights, it was all like I was kicking and screaming. Like I'm glad you're holding us, Sarah, to like how deeply uncomfortable it is.
Yeah.
It's like not even what wisdom you have for people going through the dark night, but like sort of like wisdom for the mourners' friends, like people, like for the people who want to support people who are going through the dark night. Because you're right, it's so personalized, so individual, and it is uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable. That's like the best you could say for it because it's something that kind of happens to you. Like you kind of like I felt like I sort of like put me in the washing machine and churn me around. Like that's sort of how like and I'm getting, it's my kind of rolling down the hill, getting debris in my hair. So I guess that leads me to ask Sarah, like, not so much for wisdom or advice for the person going through a dark night, although I think I'm hearing like very gently, like trusting that this isn't punishment. This isn't like that it's gonna be okay at some point. Something's gonna be okay. But I'm wondering for those of us who want to support people going through a dark night, like what's your so that we don't get punched. No one wants to punch us. As we perhaps meaningfully or well-meaningly try to support folks who are going through some of the most difficult moments of their lives. How to not be a
Yeah.
how not to be Job's friends, basically.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think when you're accompanying anybody going through anything, those sort of maxims of like, don't say I know how you feel because you don't know how they feel, right? Don't say I went through this too because your experience is different, right? It's that open-hearted being coming alongside, um, being curious. I think it helps. It always helps, right? For someone who would really listen and who is really curious and not judgmental or not trying to fix it or not trying to um, tell you what to do or why this is happening or I think our own anxieties we want to give a reason why you're going through such pain, right? It's those things that doesn't help, but someone who can just open-heartedly come alongside, be compassionate, not try to fix it, be present, ask questions. It can help to have someone who will help you clarify what's inside you because you're so confused, you're so disoriented. So having someone who is willing to be a partner to listen and help you articulate what it is that's happening can be really helpful, I think. Yeah. Yeah, and I think also the experience can feel very much like I've been abandoned and I'm alone. Um, and so knowing that someone is with you and you're not alone in this, even if they're not experiencing what you're experiencing, but they are with you in it, can be huge.
So that's beautiful, Sarah. I feel like you've given us so much to reflect on. I'm still thinking about pre-compassion. I don't
I know.
um just the way that you know, maybe ironically slash fittingly help to chart some of what it's like to be in a dark night. Again, not universalizing the experience, but I think there is a template for it, not in terms of like duration or whatever, but the fact that people hundreds of years ago were able to talk about it and what they thought God was doing through it is profound, and I think a pretty common experience. And Faith, I'm really glad that what you said about, like, there are traditions that don't know about this, that would see any faltering or any sense of abandonment problem to fix, or as a say a sign that you've not been faithful or whatever
Yes,
the
sin. Yeah.
and instead, like, it's often I mean, just working as a spiritual director, it's such a common experience of folks, with maturing faith. And so the idea, because it's already miserable enough, but the idea of feeling like you've done something wrong on top of it is just can be excruciating. So I would also put a bid in for good therapists, as we have noted before, but also consider spiritual direction, or any friend, any soul friend who, like Sarah said, is willing to accompany you in an open-hearted and open-minded way without fixing, um, and without imposing their own experience, but just to be present. Sarah, I don't know whether you consider yourself through your dark night, um, as in on the other side of it. But it seems like some of the fruits of the dark night have been planted in you. Like I hear that.
Yeah, I'm feeling like I'm most of the way through. And, thank goodness. Um, and I really do look at it like this is part of our human journey, and like you said, it's nothing that anyone should feel guilty about or judged by or shamed about, or, it's there's no fault in this. We we're here, I think, to be transformed by love into love, right? And this is part of that. And it's hard. Life's hard. Life's never easy, right? And it's okay that it's hard. It's doing what it's meant to do in us. This is our human experience, right? And when we can relax into it as best we can, and trust and surrender, and um, find moments of that pool that that comes out at the end. Um, we know that then we know that it's okay, right? Then we know that it's part. This is part of the journey. This is part of the good of being alive. Um, this is part of the love that we are that we are from, and that we are working hard in this lifetime to be transformed by into, right? It's all part of a life's what we're doing. It's all part of our life's work and what we're doing here. Um, so in that way, I look at it as like as hard as it was, and believe me, there are times my soul was crying out like, can I be done? Can this be over? I just can't. It's too hard. It's too much. Um, uh, it's good. It's for our good. It's part of, um, our whole purpose and our whole work. Uh, yes, that. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Definitely.
Uh,
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Amen and amen. And thank you so much for talking with us and telling us about your experience of the wild holy. And it's just really beautiful to hear all about it. And I think you provide a lot of hope and encouragement for other people who are going on a similar path because we all have those moments. Everybody does. Yeah.
yeah,
And I also feel,
yeah.
Sarah, like since we all know each other and love each other, when you feel like you've gotten to that pool and through it, like I think we should get you a T-shirt that says "I survived the dark night of this" and have a party and stuff.
I will wear it with pride. Although it's sort of like, I don't know the moment I tumbled into it. I don't know that there will be a moment that's clear that you're out of it, but I definitely feel like, oh, I understand a lot better. I don't feel in such darkness as I did. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can appreciate that it's ephemeral and also I'd like to get you that T-shirt. I bought my friend, like, she hasn't gotten divorced yet, but I found a card a year ago that's, like, bright pink, and it says "Happy Divorce" on it, and I've been saving it for her, so maybe I'll make a T-shirt in advance, and I'll just be there for you, Sarah, whenever you feel like, you've come to the clearing. I survived the dark night of the soul.
I'll
Um,
be sure to, then I will absolutely be sure to like let you know when I cross the finish line and can claim my prize.
yeah, it is sort of like the other corollary to that is like, I I made it through the dark night of the soul, and all I got was a stupid T-shirt.
Yes.
So,
And non-dual consciousness and
and not no consciousness and a deeper
and pre-compassion.
depression. Those could be in parentheses. I call these spiritual gifts, but I just got this stupid T-shirt. Um,
Right.
Oh my gosh. Uh,
oh, Sarah. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here, and I love laughing about this because that seems like a helpful practice to life
Absolutely.
and the spirit's absurdities. But Sarah, is there any practice or anything else, like any book or resource that you recommend to anybody who might be going through a dark night or wants to support somebody going through a dark night beyond the richness that you've shared with us today?
I'll say one thing that has been helpful and that I return to when I was really deep in it. I ran across, it's a group called uh in, integral spirituality network, I think. Um and they have guided meditations to listen to like, on their app. And They offer this practice of meditating that helps you drop into different spiritual centers of knowing, as they call it. So often we live in our head, which is one spiritual center of knowing, but they name also your heart, your womb space, or your gut, and your feet. And there's a guided meditation that helps you drop into those spaces. And I really found when I was so disoriented in my mind, connecting that energetically moving into different parts of my body and my deeper knowing uh, helped pave the way, I think. So I would lift them up and that practice especially.
Very neat. Yeah, I'll have to go check them out. In fact, I think I did check them out, Sarah, out of your recommendation earlier, and it was a really, really cool. But I did not do the meditation, so I need to go back and do that maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it with other groups and people find it really powerful. And everybody sort of across the board has said, wow, when they're able to drop down deeper into their selves, whether it's their heart, womb, feet, then when they go back into their mind is naturally much clearer, much quieter. Um, So it has like a manifest impact. Like you can feel it pretty rapidly, pretty apparently. And I think especially being in the dark night, being so disoriented, dropping down deeper, um, playing around with awareness in different parts of yourself is helpful.
Mhm. You
Yeah.
feel a little more grounded, I bet.
Yeah, it helps you at least kind of feel like you're doing something
Yeah.
when all of this is happening to you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it helped me start exploring a different way of knowing, right? To trust that to trust that exploration. Like, oh, maybe I can sense something in my gut that I can't know in my head. And I could, you know.
That's fascinating, Sarah, because I do wonder how much of the dark night of the soul is about the mind and the mind's confusion and the mind's ideas that need to be softened
Yeah,
or resolved. Yeah.
that's a good thought, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
Leaving
Sarah,
that
yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, you go ahead, Faith.
I was just saying it's that moving from the head, which is primary, and taking the control all the time. It's just out of alignment. We need all of these ways of knowing, right? But it kind of takes over, especially in our culture. And if we can, like you're saying, Sarah, be aware of those other centers of knowing, that's helpful and can
Hmm.
get the brain out of our way. Yeah.
So, Sarah, we'll try to link that resource. Um, by we, I mean Faith. Will probably put that. Faith is
Yeah,
our.
Faith, I'll send you a link to the specific meditation that
That would
does
be
that.
awesome. That'd be
Yeah.
great. I'll put that in the description of the podcast episode.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Sarah, so much for a rich conversation that
Thank you. It's
I
been
trust and
fun.
pray will be helpful to other people and for years to come. So thank you for
Yeah.
coming to the Wild Holy as a fan.
Thanks for letting Thanks
Here.
for inviting me to be on it. I love listening to you guys. I'm so excited to now like be on the inside a little.
Yay! And hopefully it won't be your last time on. So we'll
Yeah.
have you again.
We got so
Good.
much else. We've scratched the surface.
Yep.
Yes. We can talk about something less heavy maybe next time. Still deep, but maybe brighter.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.